Well, let's move on. Now, the topic for auto industry globally, of course, has been China refusing to ease its export restrictions over the supply of rare earth magnets. This has been a concern for many global OEMs, and they've been saying, well, we are weeks, maybe a month away from a large-scale production shutdowns. Remember, it was in April of this year that China implemented export controls on medium and heavy rare earth magnets. And China does not control all of the rare earths themselves. It's the processing capacity which China has. Now, by some estimates, inventory with companies was about 2 to 3 months. Since these restrictions came into effect in April, I think it's about now, that is in the month of June or July, that inventories perhaps start to run out. So let's get some perspective going on this particular topic now. What we'll do is, before we go across to our guests, let me just play out some of the views that we got from companies like Mahindra & Mahindra, Tata Motors and others, and then we'll bring in our guests this morning.
The whole supply chain of the world resides in China. So if this is true, we are still trying to come to terms with the facts, all the facts. But if this is true, it would mean that, and if it doesn't change, then in a matter of weeks, the entire Indian EV industry will grind to a halt.
I would be wrong in saying that we don't have dependence on this. There is dependence. As SIAM president, SIAM as well as ACMA both are very closely interacting with the government. Government has been very supportive on this issue, in terms of reaching out to the Chinese government also, the relevant ministries there. And we hope that the issue might be, taken care of.
This EV supply chain disruption is certainly going to pose a short to medium term challenge. And I think as India plans its EV strategy and EV plan, the adoption will have to be phased in or phased up, along with developing an Atmanirbhar supply chain in India, where India, as the world's leading two-wheeler market, which has produced 3 of the top 5 companies by volume globally, has its own supply chain, its own R&D, its own capability, and EV is really built on that basis.
Okay, let me welcome in our guests now. Mahesh Babu is CEO, Switch Mobility. We have Hemal Thakkar, a Senior Practice Leader and Director at Crisil Intelligence. Gentlemen, good morning. Great to have both of you here. And I think you heard from pretty much the top guys in terms of auto companies there. Mahesh, let me start with you. Is it starting to hit? Will it start to hit? How far out are we in terms of some of these disruptions, production disruptions coming into effect?
Prashant, first is not only India. I think we should understand that the whole world is affected, because China has brought this across Europe, US, India and other countries as well. So 70% of the mining of rare earths are done by the Chinese companies. And almost 90% of the refining is done by the Chinese companies. So the world is dependent about 90% on supply chain from China. Now in April, China has introduced a policy of licensing to export rare earth magnets and to the country. So auto industry have been working. The procedure has been kept about 45 days. All our suppliers have applied already, but unfortunately we heard we'll have to apply through some Ministry of External Affairs about 20 days back, and our suppliers have again applied. So it's a question of disruption right now in a short term. We also have to think about long term, because if 90% of the rare earth magnets are going to come, and India has a vision of sustainable mobility through electric, then through Atmanirbhar, we'll have to, as industry, look at mid-term, short-term and long-term perspective. So short-term, the industry has to work with both the governments to see how the licensing process.
Right. So let's just break it down a little bit, Mahesh. First up, where are these magnets used? Is it more used in two-wheelers? Is it more used in four-wheelers? Is it used in both? What about EVs versus ICE? Is there a differentiation used in one or the other or both? And are these critical that that vehicles can't be produced, or can vehicles be produced without them?
Most of the permanent magnet synchronous motors, which we call as PMSM, is almost 70% of the motor production, which is the main drivetrain. both in, you can take across two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, and commercial vehicles. Almost 70% are permanent magnet synchronous motors, which needs rare earth magnets because it is high temperature resistant magnets and they need it. So almost 70% of the industry on PMSM is dependent on it, mainly the drivetrain of EVs. Apart from that, there are also other motors across the vehicles which are maybe less sensitive to rare earths, but still needs magnets on it. So the whole supply chain of magnets and rare earth minerals are dependent on it. So 70% of the whole EV industry, from two-wheelers to commercial vehicle, everything is affected due to the supply chain disruption in the magnet.
So it's not it's critical. It's at the heart of motors, etc. So without it, there is no production possible across two-wheelers and four-wheelers, right? That's essentially what you're saying.
Absolutely.
There were some news reports suggesting that with these licenses, it's eased up a little bit for companies in Europe, etc. In terms of Indian companies, we've not seen anything yet.
So the procedure for application just got eased out. Everybody was hoping, our suppliers were hoping that they will be able to complete the process by mid of June and end of June because they started in April. So some of the companies across Europe, US, India, everybody is trying. I think it is in a sequence which is getting approved. The challenge is uncertainty. If it gets approved and the supply chain starts by mid of June, I don't think any disruption for our production at least will happen between July and going forward. But however, this uncertainty has created a lot of supply chain challenges. If it happens, we welcome. If it doesn't happen, then the situation is it's going to take another 30, 40 days and there is going to be a disruption in the manufacturing. The manufacturing line of automobile includes many manpower. So if you look at auto industry fully, and particularly EV with about 2 million plus vehicles being sold last year, it will easily to 1,000 to 3,000 manpower will get affected if there is no supply chain disruption directly, and indirectly many more will get affected. So we need to be cautious of that and then take action on short term to get this process done. As told by the other people, through CM, through FICCI, through other auto bodies, we have been working with the government and government have been supportive. Now we hopeful we will debottleneck in a couple of weeks.
Thanks for that perspective, Mr. Babu. I mean, there are some reports indicating that I think China wants to have a better tracking mechanism and therefore continuous reporting from companies that indeed get the licenses for these magnets. Let's see how this plays out. Let me bring in Hemal Thakkar into the conversation as well. Hemal, what is your assessment of the situation? Mr. Babu just told us that, I mean, these magnets are so critical that you basically cannot manufacture without them. So there doesn't seem to be any workarounds or a go-around. What would your assessment be of the current level of inventory? I don't know if we have even worth of how many weeks, and what happens from here on?
Yeah, so thank you for having me. I would actually tend to agree to what Mr. Babu said and what even Shailesh mentioned. You can't run away from the fact that there is dependence. But I really don't see that, this is a situation to panic at this point of time. Our internal assessment suggests that, in June, we may not see much of an impact. We are relatively good, from a June perspective. But if this gets further prolonged, then, we will see more impact from July onwards. Again, when we look at segment specific, we feel two-wheeler ICE and three-wheeler ICE will probably have the lowest impact. But, when it comes to EVs, we feel that the electric vehicle will possibly have a higher impact, especially where PMSM motors are used. Because today magnets are used in many applications within, the automobile. But for other applications, if they are not rarer, you can still live with it and you will still be in a position to manage them. Also, our interactions with many manufacturers indicate that, there is a workaround that they are trying, but, it will take some time for some breakthrough to come in. So, over the next 4 to 6 weeks, if we do not see a major resolution on this front, then we are looking at we are staring at a problem.
So by July, if there's no breakthrough, then by July, this could start hurting. Anything additional you want to add on the bit of the workaround? In India, they say that when we have our back against the wall, we come up with all kinds of innovative solutions. So this is more the four-wheeler manufacturers. They are thinking of the workarounds, or is it the two-wheeler guys? I mean,
Everybody will think
what are you hearing?
everybody will think of a workaround because they would want their production to go on,
Yeah.
I can see Mahesh laughing, so I'm sure, even they are looking at something, where they would want to have a workaround, but, workarounds cannot be done overnight. There is reasonable time that they will have to spend into it, to ensure that a resilient supply chain is built. And I would tend to agree to what, Sudarshan also mentioned earlier. This is, a clarion call for us to localize more as compared to, what we've done now. And hence, this is very, very critical that long term, from a structural perspective, we will definitely need a workaround.
But Hemal, I mean, it's very true, right? Look at the entire chip manufacturing ecosystem that we're setting up. The birth was, it kind of came from a space 2-3 years back when we had a global chip shortage, and we realized that we cannot be so dependent. For rare earth magnets, I mean, do we have the wherewithal to even set up capacity? Because we need the rare earths first, right? Those minerals first.
Yeah, so same is the case, with respect to battery. If you see, chemicals are something where we may not have access, but we will still be, kind of producing cells. So, from that perspective, yes, maybe with respect to raw material, we may still be dependent, but we can still put up processing capacities. Like Mr. Babu alluded earlier, that 90% plus processing happens in China. So if we are having access to material, 30% which is still outside China, we may still be in a position to make the supply chain more resilient.
Okay. But that panic thing, as they say, right? If you want to panic, panic early. Hemal, in terms of order of impact, you're saying four-wheelers most impacted? At the other end of the spectrum, it's two-wheeler and three-wheeler ICE. Two-wheeler and three-wheeler ICE is what you said, right?
Yeah, two-wheeler and three-wheeler ICE possibly the least impacted. Even passenger vehicles ICE this month, there may not be a material impact. But, in the subsequent months, if, the issues don't resolve, then we may start seeing some impact on ICE. But EVs, yes, from July onwards, if there is no resolution.
No, I'm not talking about June or July, Hemal. As fundamentally, I mean, say, for example, tomorrow, if everybody runs out of rare earth magnets, I'm saying who's most impacted, who's least impacted?
So least impacted would be two-wheeler ICE and three-wheeler ICE, followed by PV ICE, I would say, and CV ICE. PV and CV, you can, have it very similar, but the least impacted will be two-wheeler and three-wheeler ICE.
Okay, got it.
And the top would be a four-wheeler EV, followed by two-wheeler and three-wheeler EV, right? Most impacted.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, all right. A good conversation, gentlemen, and I think it's something we'll continue to track as we go on. Mahesh and Hemal, thanks very much for joining us. It's a pleasure having both of you here for that discussion. We'll take a